Hey, legend. Today we are talking to Dr. Mahmoud Ghannoum. He is hilarious. This was a really, really funny conversation. He has been called the leading microbiome researcher in the world. His work has been cited over 30,000 times in scientific literature, and he has published more than 500 individual research papers on how bacteria and fungi impact our health. And so that's what we talk about today. We talk about why you shouldn't kiss someone with a furry tongue, how to get your gut biome and fungi in the right state so that you can positively influence your focus, concentration, your sexual performance, and what to do about it, like what we can actually do to influence it in a positive way and what not to do so that we don't put ourselves in a bad situation in the long term. But it's mostly today about slowing down and how do we make sure that we're doing little incremental positives so that we can outweigh the negatives on our gut bacteria so that we can become faster, smarter, stronger, and more sexy. Hope you enjoy it. Beautiful. Dr. Mahmoud, I'm so grateful to have you here. The mycobiome has influenced a lot of my life. I first came across it when I was 16. Actually, I was very depressed. I couldn't figure out what was going on. My skin was terrible. I had really bad acne and I was on Roaccutane, taking drugs for it and just very confused. And so hopefully we can clear some of that confusion up for guys listening today, but really grateful to have you on. Thank you for coming.
I really appreciate Josh for asking me. It's a great pleasure to talk to you.
Perfect. So let's jump in. How would you explain the microbiome to a 5-year-old or a 12-year-old, someone that just has zero context in really simple way?
It's very simple. As you know, if you think about it, we have microbes in our hand. That's why we wash a lot of the time. Now these microbes or microorganisms, we call them, they can be not only in our hands, they can be in our body, on our skin, in our gut, in our mouth, all over the place. What's really important to remember with the microbiome, because of what we had in COVID, everybody is worried about germs. But in addition to bad germs that cause disease, we have also good guys, beneficial organisms. And they also live in our body. And these good microbes interact with the bad one and they try to keep them under control. So for us, if you think about microorganisms, is this another organisms or other organisms that live in our body and they really help us, or they could also cause us some issues.
Yeah. Is that what you call a dysbiosis? I've heard that word used. Is that when it's gone too far the other way?
Yes, dysbiosis is really imbalance. What we mean by imbalance, it means the number of beneficial or good guys, good microbes, they become less in number, or what we call their abundance or level is low. While the bad ones, which cause infection, for example, or we call them pathogens, they overgrow. So their number is much higher than the good ones. And that's why we have imbalance, or as you said, dysbiosis.
And can the symptoms be very varied, I imagine, from emotional to just like skin? Like what kind of happens? What would be some key indicators to know that you have a dysbiosis or not?
First of all, if you start to have some issues with bloating, for example, constipation, flatulence, and also you are right, the skin also could have some breakage. Acne, for example, it could occur more often. So when you start to see these, what you call signs, then you should start to think about, oh, I may have imbalance. One of the things, for example, when we have white tongue, for example, is what we call as oral thrush. Okay, oral thrush, it is candida, basically a fungus that overgrow there. So then oh, there is something here not right, and I need to take care of it.
Yeah, yeah. It makes me, once I learnt about that, and I've got a nice and healthy tongue. I remember when I was single and dating a lot, seeing lots of different girls. And if they opened their mouth and they had a dirty, I'd be like out of there. I'm like, get me out of here. I'm like, done. I'm not going to, and but you kind of, in that moment, it's usually as you're going for the kiss. And so you're like,
Yes.
oh no, I'm too far in. Like, how do I?
Too late now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And what do you feel like a lot of people they don't understand? Like, what are some common misconceptions you think that a lot of people have about their gut health and its influence on our life?
People think our gut health because sometimes maybe we eat the wrong stuff and whatever, but we never consider the role of these microorganisms.
Mm.
And really, what's so interesting, recent discoveries started to show that one major player is these organisms that live in your gut, also in your skin, and all over the place.
Mm.
So, in addition to looking at external factors, okay, such as, for example, if you are stressed out, a lot of the time, we all want to go to the bathroom when we have a stressed situation. What we need to remember, we also should think of the microorganisms or the microbiome that live in our body. And if we balance it, studies have been showing recently that, this is going to help not only your gut health, but also your mental health, for example.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard it said that like stress is almost like creating little tears in you, like having that constant stress, which I think a lot of people overlook, and I've definitely overlooked in my own life. There's that common, conversation around Warren Buffett, who's like 90 years old and he like drinks Coke and eats shitty food, but he's just so not stressed out. He just like spends his time reading and stuff like that. And then you'll have someone who can look really good on the outside and be very, jacked and very fit, but because they have this constant level of stress, they're kind of destroying their body from the inside out. Is that a correct assumption
It's
or?
really very, very correct, actually.
Yeah.
In what way? I tell you, we had a lady, she took a gut test,
Mm.
and, we found that she has imbalance or dysbiosis. Then I looked at her food, what she eats, and she eats perfectly the good food, fibers, a lot of good plant proteins, fish, all of this great. Yet her microbiome is out of balance.
Mm.
And when, of course, we have questions we ask them, and one of the questions is stress, and she was severely stressed. So I said, listen, we really need to take care of this. You need to start to do some meditation. You need to start to doing some yoga, go for walks. You need to relax, okay?
Mm.
And if you do this, guess what? You are gonna improve your gut health and of course rebalance your microbiome, which is going to help you all over. And because of the what you call gut brain axis, which is the microorganisms that live in our body communicate with our brain. So once we fix what's in our gut, guess what? It sends a message to our brain where we still have where we start to have less stress. And
Mm.
I always talk about men. Men, we are not as smart as women in this regard, because women, if you notice what they do a lot of yoga. So I used to go to my yoga, and I was the only man there. So now when when I give talks to in symposiums and presentations, I say, listen to my men colleague, start doing yoga. And people laugh, but it's really true. We need to have relax. We are more serious sometimes. We need to have a little meditation, go walk out in nature. This will
Mm.
all help your mental health and make you less stressed.
Yeah, I'd love to know, like, what are the key things that you see in your practice when you see people, like, what are the key things that they're doing wrong? It sounds like constant stress and not de-stressing would be one of them, but is there anything else that really springs front of
Yeah,
mind?
I mean, related to stress, first of all, is the lifestyle, like exercise. I find exercise is very, very critical. And people sometimes make a mistake. They go all aggressive. They are, very intense exercise. No, no, you really need to take it easy. Everything is in moderation. So if you take walks, for example, 30 minutes walks 3 to 4 times, they will be very, very helpful. So you need to exercise. And one of the things I do, I have my dog Prince, his name. I love this dog. Why? Because when I'm working here all day, I reach home and I'm really so tired and stressed out, as you say. Dealing with people these days is not easy. So I take my dog, walk outside, and oh my God, I feel great. So That's the other thing if people can do. And of course, on top of that is diet. We need to eat the right type of food. I mean, it's well known using the westernized diet is not really good for us, because it has a lot of red meat with high saturated fats. So we need to cut that down, because what we found in studying the microbiome is that the more red meat, the more fat you have, guess what? You increase the bacteria that can cause inflammation, what we call it pro-inflammatory. So we need to cut that down and start eating fibers. You may ask, why fibers? Fibers are like, you find it in lentils, you find it in bananas, in the unripened side, beans, and I love nuts, for example. What they do, they provide food for the beneficial bacteria that support us. So in a way, we don't break them down. Our system as humans, we cannot break down fiber as good as the bacteria does it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what you need. If you can start following these, have some antioxidant, eat garlic. I love garlic. I know, I'm from the Mediterranean, so people say, "Oh my God, what's going on?" But I tell you, it has great benefits, especially when we make salad. Garlic, lemon, and olive oil are fantastic things. So if you start following a good diet as well as a lifestyle, you are gonna for sure improve your gut health and overall health.
What would be some of the benefits that someone would you would see someone experiencing if they're in a standard, they're not eating trash, they're not eating like McDonald's and stuff like that, but they're like, okay, let's switch some things up, let's add some fibers, some garlic, and that sort of stuff. What would be some common benefits you'd see someone in that case?
Common benefit, first of all, you can reduce the gastrointestinal symptoms. And, we mentioned some of them, like bloating, gas, for example. If, constipation, you'll start to have less inflammation, One thing we did a study in a diet. I don't know if I wrote a book. It's called Total Gut Balance, and we did the clinical trial to evaluate that. And we looked at people with SIBO, a small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and that caused a lot of gut issues. When they followed that diet, really, the first week, not much difference. Second week, not much difference. Even though we did microbiome analysis and we found the second week, we started to see a shift of the microbiome towards better, friendlier germs in our body. But by the third week, you definitely start to have less, bloating, all of these well-known symptoms that are associated with inflammation.
Yeah, I'm curious because I've had, I've been exploring before with the carnivore diet and like eliminating, and sometimes I've had a bad dysbiosis in the past. I got a parasite, I got a tapeworm, unfortunately, traveling through Nepal, so threw everything out of whack. And it was like I couldn't eat anything because my gut was so damaged that even when I was trying to go down that path of eating a more diet like you're prescribing, it was so irritating to my gut. Have you seen any benefit of doing an elimination diet and then transitioning to this? Or, yeah, maybe you can speak to
I
that a
think
bit.
that's reasonable. Elimination diet, maybe in a way, it's going to help you to identify what sort of food can irritate you. So it's good to find that out. And I always say, whenever you want to go into a diet, I am a great believer in moderation. Like, start slowly. Don't just jump into it and eliminate everything, So let's start, test certain things, see what suits you, what's improving you. And then after some time, you realize what type of diet that's going to help you, That's why take your time, maybe 2-3 weeks testing. Then once you identify, you change your diet towards what really works with your metabolic system, for example.
And what if someone's like kind of had a pretty, I guess, overdose on antibiotics as they're growing up, because it's like, it feels like even as I grew up, I was like, wow, what the hell? Like the doctor would just be like, here, have this, have this, have this. You got a cold, have some antibiotics. And then you're like, Jesus, I just wiped out everything that was good in my stomach. Like, as an adult, what would you suggest? Taking some
Wow.
probiotics, or just the diet's going to help it? Or there's a study, I believe, that showed that there was irreversible changes
Yeah.
once you took a series of antibiotics to your gut
So
microbiome.
this is very interesting because I did studies, particularly in antibiotics.
Mm,
First of all, antibiotics, there are different types of antibiotics. There's
mm,
broad spectrum antibiotic. You know what's broad spectrum is like? It kills everything. Not only the organism that causing our infection, also the good guys. And the studies have shown that by taking broad spectrum antibiotic like minocycline, doxycycline, you are really killing everything, and you end up having imbalance. And you know what's so interesting? The change in the microbiome, not only in your gut, also they found in the skin. You
wow.
have more bad. So it's got. I wrote a paper on gut, skin, brain axis. So it's all connected. So then in this study which I published in journal Antibiotics, we looked at the broad spectrum antibiotic. We compared it to another antibiotic which is narrow spectrum. What does it mean, narrow spectrum? It really focuses in few organisms. It does not obliterate everything or kill everything. And we found that the effect on the microbiome is much less when you use the narrow spectrum compared to the broad spectrum. So that's in general. I think this is well established.
Mm,
Now, to me, what to do? Sometimes we really need to take care of the infection. We cannot just not take antibiotic. I think you should take the antibiotic, but then you should, after you finish the course, start taking probiotic to try to replenish or really rebuild the microbes, the good guys that are in your gut. And with that, you come back to normality. And you are absolutely right. Sometimes, depending on how aggressive the antibiotic, it may take very long time to rebalance itself.
mm.
But I think if you take probiotic, try to do what we said before, the right diet, the right exercise, and whatever, it will come back. It will
Mm.
come back.
How much time do you think, if someone's had a pretty consistent childhood of antibiotics, like as an adult, how long do you think it would take? Like, could we be talking
I,
6 months, a year?
yeah, I would say 3 to 6 months will be very reasonable.
Yeah,
Very
yeah.
reasonable.
And then is it this idea that I've got in my head is like 90% consistency with your diet if you're in this state doesn't equal 90% results, because you're feeding bacteria that allows it to grow back. Is that correct? Like you need to be quite strict to get some good results. Like I know you can do 50, 60, 70. Could you speak to that, expand on that?
I think really, definitely, if you are out of balance, you need to be consistent. You need to
Mm,
try to follow so that you can help them. Now, once you are back into balance, you don't. And how do you know you have back into balance? We don't have all these symptoms. Gut symptoms, anxiety, tiredness, all of this thing. Once you start reach there, then listen. We don't have to be vegan, for example, because that has in its own problem. It's 80-20. Try to mix it. I love to have ice cream, for example. I like to have a little
me
bit
too.
lamb
Same.
lamb chops. I love lamb chops. But you don't have to have too much. It's just little amount so that you enjoy it. At the same time, you are not depriving yourself.
Mm, yeah. But that in that healing process, if we can't really go and do that 80-20, because the 20% would feed the dysbiosis. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
at the beginning, we need to focus, okay, how we can bring it back. But then
Mm,
once we bring it back, like we just finished of the holidays, people are going to eat no matter what you do. It's okay, but go back quickly,
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I'd love to know your thoughts on, do you have a recommended probiotic? Like there's a bunch that I've used and, I've researched a lot because of my own, health issues when I was younger. And it can seem like it varies a lot. Like if you just buy stuff at the pharmacy, I read a pretty horrific study that it was like saying that some of it's just like feces. Like it's like the terrible,
Yes,
terrible. You wouldn't even want it near your body, let alone in your
yes.
body.
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
that correct? Like there's a
Like
pretty
fecal
broad.
transplant,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not fond of it. Now, just before I answer, I want to be transparent. I started a company called Biome Health, okay?
Mm.
And we developed a probiotic based on our publications in Crohn's disease patients. And now what's so interesting about this, I just published a paper in gastroenterology, one of the top journals in gastroenterology, and we formulate this new probiotic, but then we validated. We did testing to show it works. And this is like when you are developing a drug, even though these are a nutritional supplement, you have to do validation. You need to test it to show, okay, it works. Okay, so we did in vitro testing in test tube. We did in animals, and then we published now recently 3 clinical trials showing that the symptoms went down. Okay, the gastrointestinal symptoms went down, became better. Also, what's important, we look at the microbiome. We took fecal samples or stool samples from people, and we looked at the microbiome, and guess what? It shifted towards more positive. Like, for example, it reduced candida, which is the fungus, which is really major problem. And finally, we looked with the 3rd clinical trial we showed that it improved absorption of amino acids, like proteins can break. So all this tells you, like, based on science, I would say this is a good probiotic. But I'm not knocking anybody else. I am a scientist, okay? And I like medicine. I hope all the companies that do develop probiotic do the validation, because without validation, we don't know. It's like a cowboy, west.
Yeah, shooting from the hip, just like
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, because there's even the, like, in melatonin that you can buy over the counter. It's like 5,000 times variance, like, which is insane. You don't even know, like, what you're getting and what's actually on the label versus what's in the bottle is, like, that different is crazy.
That's really where I come from. I'm tenured professor. I've been spending all my life studying these things. I like science. It's like, and as you say in the clinical practice, is evidence based. When you want to buy something, try to search it a little bit, see if they publish something about that probiotic or not, or prebiotic. And then based on that, you can select something on a more scientific basis rather than just, what they tell you.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any, like, if someone's getting into this sort of stuff, so they've got a probiotic, do you use herbs, antifungal, like, because you can get over-the-counter antifungal medicine, or you can be looking at raw oregano oil, which is really good. Like, what would your kind of 1, 2, 3 combo be if you're suggesting something?
I think what you will do, you should use probiotics that are known to really not only control the bacteria, because these probiotic, what they do, they secrete these small molecules, metabolites, which can keep the bad guys down. Okay, but also they can help in the symptoms. Like they produce what you call short chain fatty acids. These little chemicals which really help us with respect to keep our gut intact. Gut lining, instead of breaking down, and because if it breaks down, then you have what you call leaky gut. It's like you are in the house with your pipes in the house. If you have any holes in it, we'll have water all over the bathroom, for example. So we need, this will help you a lot. So you need to find things that are gonna not only support your gut, but also hopefully can go beyond towards improving your stress level, reducing it, and anxiety. So all of that, you put it together. I like to have, we mentioned before, garlic, turmeric, for example. We just published a paper about, there is something in our gut. It's called biofilm. You know what biofilm? It's like the plaque in our teeth, but they form it in the gut. See, these bad bugs, they come together, they sit on our gut lining, and they start to poke holes in it. So you need some probiotic that are able, and enzymes. So in addition to probiotic, you need enzymes. You need some, as we said, herbal. Some vitamins, for example, is very, very important. All of these work together to try to get rid of these biofilm, digestive biofilms. And by doing this, you really have more sort of intact and safe gut lining, which really important for our health.
Yeah. Can a dysbiosis affect our libido and sexual health and sexual performance as well?
Definitely, because if you think about it, it's not affecting one system. You have inflammation, and when you are inflamed, when you have, it's gonna affect you. It's gonna affect all your, other
Yeah.
parts of the body.
Yeah. And like, let's say, back when I was single and I was meeting lots of different people, I was basically swapping bugs. Is that right? Like, it's like,
Yes,
so you maybe should be a little bit more cautious than
yes,
like if I
of
could go
course.
backwards in time.
Of
Like,
course. It's so interesting. I'm just did the study, nothing to do with the microbiome, but it's against like swapping bugs with respect to what you are saying. There is a new fungus called the Trichophyton indotineae, a new fungus. This
sounds
was
frightening.
it's a skin infection. It's not that as bad as the other systemic infection. And what they found is it was discovered in India first, and it is resistant to the top uh, antifungal for the skin, terbinafine. So now people are worried about it. And what we have, the CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, they put what you call broad agency announcement. They want people to study this. And my team put something there. But where I am going with respect to the sexual issue, one case was sent to us to analyze it and see a woman who was traveling abroad. She had sexual intercourse. She got it from the partner. Then she came back into the US. She slept with somebody else, and guess what? That person got it. So there is now. It's really, really very important to try to see, as you say, you exchange bad with these people. So you need to be careful who you sleep with and this sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I heard as well that like this idea that if you're going to do a cleanse or change your gut microbiome, make a plan to do that, probiotics, fermented foods, whatever, but the whole household needs to do it because
Yes.
otherwise it'll contradict itself. Like the dog, like everything needs to be basically on the system. Is that right?
This is again, I think definitely there
Mm.
is a relationship between if you have an infection or if you have, let's say, growth of a certain organism, other members of the house could get it as well. So you are absolutely right. In fact, I tell you again, you are reminding me of some papers which we published a long time ago. We looked at people who have nail infections, okay, nail
Mm.
and athlete foot, and what we found, we took strains from the patient in the household, and we took from other members of the family. And what we found that 50% of families we tested, they share their strains. So
Wow.
definitely it goes around in the house.
Yeah. I feel like, and then like, especially if you're playing sports or anything like that, you basically just have to isolate for
Yeah,
that period of time because it's like
yeah,
if we'll be playing sports and you give each other a hug afterwards and everyone's covered in sweat. It's gross.
yeah,
But
yeah.
in the moment, and then you're like, oh, I just got covered in somebody else's, bacteria, and I'm trying to cleanse. It's like,
Look,
yeah,
we don't have to go neurotic about this. Let's say, okay, just be careful. I mean, you see, say these things, oh, no, I shouldn't do this. Yeah. You know what I mean?
yeah, totally,
Yeah.
totally. And how much do you think glyphosate and like, let's say, something that I got really into, obviously, I grew up in the country. And so it
Oh,
was like, we're very far away from a lot of cities and that sort of thing. So it was like, we saw the cow or the lamb, speaking of lamb, we have really great lamb in Australia. I don't know if you've been, but good lamb chops. But the point being is like we had really organic food just naturally, it wasn't even called organic. It was just food that grew in our garden. And so how much of an impact do you think that glyphosate and conventional foods is having on this microbiome? And even if you change your diet, but really, wouldn't you still be eating a lot of poison that are killing good bacteria?
yeah, these herbicides this is one, glyphosate is one of them. It's a broad
Mm.
spectrum herbicide, which means, remember,
Ah.
as we talked about antibiotic, broad spectrum, it kills everything. So we
Mm.
are getting rid of some of the beneficial organisms that we find even in the plants. And really, these have been associated with respiratory effects. Okay,
Mm.
respiratory effects, for example, nose irritation and asthma. Okay, so these are not very, using all these herbicides that kills everything is not good idea. The other thing, which is, again, you notice I always bring you back to the fungus. Okay, because I am a fungi. All right. So they in the Netherlands they did a study where they use herbicides that kill fungi, and guess what happened? The fungi in the herbs in the plants, they developed resistance, and then that resistant strains, they were transferred to humans. So now, because we are killing, not only affecting the plants, but this also can increase antimicrobial resistance. So I think we should have a limited use of these things. And again, I would prefer something which is narrow spectrum rather than killing everything.
Yeah. So do you eat predominantly just pretty much only organic, or like, non-GMO? Like, what's your
Yeah,
diet like in that
I
regard?
like non-GMO, but I'm not very. I must be honest. I'm not like everything organic. It's very difficult to eat just organic, especially when you look at the pricing these days. Is really very expensive. Like to me, as long as you are healthy, we don't have to become neurotic without everything. Oh, you have to be clean 100%. Well, nobody can be clean 100%.
Yeah.
So look, be reasonable. If you can see something organic, which is great. Otherwise, when you have, like, for example, when I buy regular tomatoes, I love tomatoes, by the way. We wash it. You wash it very well before you eat it and whatever, and that will reduce the exposure
Mm.
to these herbicides.
Yeah, it's interesting because I went through a very decent few years of being very neurotic about buying only organic and etc. And I think it might have done me, like, the stress that I was putting myself under was probably more damaging than
Yes.
the
Yeah.
spray and like actually cleaning it and looking after it properly.
I
You
really
know?
agree with you. That's why I say, listen, okay, if I can, and people can't afford it. Honestly, a lot of the time people ask me, I mean, this is
Oh
not
my god, dude.
news. Yeah, it's
So
so
expensive.
expensive. The other day, it's so funny. My wife, she saw went supermarket, and we have this little mandarin, but they are like two, each one for $3. I say, "No, listen, I mean, I don't want to eat that mandarin, no matter how much it is." So you need to be reasonable, and as long as you wash it, you are careful. I think it should be fine.
Mm. So if we transition into like fungus itself, like I've done it, gratefully done quite a bit of mushroom picking in. I lived in Vancouver, Canada, like in
Oh,
east the west coast. Beautiful, yeah, beautiful country. I've never done it before, and so we would go out into the forest, and you would see, all these mushrooms, and we'd obviously find the poisonous ones and the edible ones, and just beautiful to go and make that. My friend's a chef, and so he would make like a chanterelle pasta, like to die for. Like
yes.
I'm
Yeah.
telling you, and when I'm looking at that, and maybe you could expand on this or correct me if I'm wrong, is that the fungus is already here. It's already under the floor. And then the mushroom coming up is basically like the flower. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, yeah.
Okay. So how would is that what happens in our bodies if we have like the spores coming up? Like what happens in our bodies if that's what happens on the forest
In
floor?
our bodies, especially those organisms such as like Aspergillus, Candida, is not mushroom. Mushrooms really are very good to eat because they are fibers.
Mm.
Okay? Again, they will feed the good organisms. So we don't have in our body start to have flowering. What they do,
Spores
they
and
change
yeah.
their shape.
Mm.
Instead of becoming like mushrooms, with the head and this sort of thing,
Mm-hmm.
instead of being like bud like, they become like threads, filaments.
Ah, right. And I've seen those on the
Yes,
forest floor as well. So that's more
exactly.
like that.
That's
Okay.
what happens, and then what they do is once they start to form the filaments, these filaments they produce enzymes.
Mm.
Enzymes such as phospholipase. Long time ago, I was funded to study phospholipase produced by Candida, and it's really amazing. It starts to form these filaments, and at the tip of it secretes this enzyme that can break down the cell membrane. It can
Wow.
break down our cell. That's why they can poke holes in our gut. You see, and what they do in our gut, how it starts the whole process. Let's say an organism went into our body, okay, or we have it also. A lot of the time, even Candida is in our body. Like 50% of people carry that. As long as the level or the abundance is low, it's fine.
Mm.
We don't want to overgrow. But
Mm.
when overgrow, what it does, it adheres or stick to our gut line. Once they stick to our gut line, they start to change their shape, as we said, that they become like filaments or threads, and then also they form what we call, what mentioned before, the biofilms, which is, which really, it's like a jello, and inside this jello you have these microbes. This jello protects them against antibiotics, against antifungal, for example, because bacteria does the same, and also against our immune system. You can't get rid of them. Okay.
Wow.
So that's why what you need to do, you need to take something that can break down this biofilm, because once it's broken, it's easy to be eliminated because they don't stick to something and they are not protected.
Crazy. So it sounds like there's like this, so it starts to grow and this webbing gets created, but they almost have like these little spears that can
Yes.
pierce through the gut lining. That's crazy. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. What was it like when you first discovered that? You must have been like
You know,
mind blown.
I actually, what we did, we took a mouse, a study. We did a study in mice. We give them candida, and then after some time, we took their gut, the intestine and the colon, and then we did sectioning in them.
Mm.
And what we used, you first of all, you see that they have these filaments there. Really beautiful picture. I published a paper. I don't know if you look at it. It's called about phospholipase. If you look at me, my name Ghannoum, phospholipase, and uh, clinical micro review, it has a colored picture how the cell is become like a thread, and at the tip of it, it secretes this enzyme, and we use a coloring to see where is this enzyme. It's like ahead of the filament, ahead of the thread, you have this enzyme secreted, which opening the way for the gut to go, for the fungi to go in.
Wow.
It's really a fascinating, beautiful picture. I
Wow.
can send you the paper.
Yeah, I'd love that. Yeah, please. That would be incredible. Wow. And so you're doing this, so you're getting like, so you basically dissect the mouse, put it into chunks, and then you're looking at this under a microscope, and then that's how you can see all of the
Exactly. Under the
changes.
microscope, yes, yes.
Wow. Crazy. What was your, I guess, initial reaction when you saw this, you know?
Oh, I mean, scientists, we don't need drugs to be excited. This makes you so happy. Oh my God, I couldn't believe it. The picture I have is they are. I always say, because we live in Cleveland, there is snow. As
Mhm.
if you have the snow plow, it's really pushing the way, clearing the snow and going in. It's really
Wow.
fascinating.
Wow, beautiful. What was another discovery that you've made that gave you that same feeling? Like maybe you've had lots, but what was one that really stood out in this discovery of the microbiome?
I mean, this one thing which is, as I mentioned, it really from the scientific point of view. But really, what's fascinating also made me excited is the discovery that these bacteria and fungus in our gut, they would play together. It's
Mm.
not like we always think there are bacteria there, there's fungus, but no, they
Right,
come
like a divine.
cooperate. They
Yeah.
interact and they cooperate and they start doing their thing. So that was very, very important, because when I used to go to meetings, everybody talks about bacteria, and I say, look, you need to look at fungi as well,
Yeah.
because when we take, as you mentioned, antibiotic, you kill the good bacteria, and these good bacteria keep the fungi under control.
Mm.
Which, when you kill them, then you have overgrowth of candida. And
Mm.
then we said, oh, we need to really look at too. And now the good news, many other scientists start to show the importance of how these organisms work together.
Wow. So do you think, and here's a random thought, okay? Do you think that sometimes the body will allow a parasite or a bad fungus to come in because it cannot digest the food that we're giving it? So let's say we're giving it trash food, right? That it's really not really food. It's like undigestible. Do you think the body will recruit, bad quote unquote bacteria in order to help it digest the shit that we're giving it?
Yeah, I think what happened, because there isn't that good enough, they go and the body, of course, will receive these organisms anyway. But then, because of the environment, they start to overgrow.
Right. Okay.
Overgrow, and then guess what? They are gonna cause issues.
Yeah, yeah, because
And
it's really interesting. I mean, when you think about it's pretty gross. Like if you think about the tapeworm that I had,
yeah,
like this thing is living inside of me. It's eating
yeah,
and shitting
yeah,
inside of my body, and then my body's trying to like digest. It's
yeah.
disgusting, but
And
it's
it's
really weird.
happy. She doesn't want to affect you too much because this is a good home for it. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. The craziest thing was like going through the detoxing because I learned that if I took anti-parasitic medicine, and even though it was specific for tapeworm, it would kill too much of my good bacteria. And it was a beef tapeworm, so only one lives in the colon at one time,
Yeah.
and the others, the larvae, live inside your gallbladder. And so you would kill the big one, and
And
then the little one would come out and just start growing, and you've basically fucked yourself because
yeah,
you killed all the good bacteria.
it's terrible.
It's horrific. And then it's like you're like, oh my god, I'm a living nightmare. Like it was so
It's like
crazy.
what you said because you traveled. Also, when I travel, like when I travel to India, for example, oh my God, I'm very careful. I am
Yeah.
really careful there. I don't eat anything which is not cooked. I don't water. You have to drink bottled water. You cannot. You have to be
Oh my
careful.
god. And I was so. I was like 20. I think I was 21. So I was
You,
like,
you,
wow, whatever. And I'm
you
like
don't know.
drinking
Yeah,
like fermented cow's milk and like in the middle, like it's warm. It's not even like it's been fermented properly. It's just like on the side of a mountain.
I know. I
And I
know.
was yeah. But the thing that I was going to say to wrap that piece up is how aggressive the detox symptoms were as I started to change because I had to be incredibly strict. It was herbs. It was like I got it tested, from a
Yeah.
place in the US, and the die-off symptoms of this creature. Like you said, it wants me to be happy. So because it's got a good environment, but as it dies,
Oh,
it lets off all of these neurotoxins. Basically, is
toxins.
that right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow,
And the
wow,
problem, because they already have effect on your gut lining, is start to go into the bloodstream and cause issues all over the place.
yeah.
So no
I
wonder
thought
you were not feeling great.
I thought I was going crazy. Like I was like I couldn't sleep. Like I was like, and I stuck with it, thankfully, and retested, and it was gone. But how I found out I had a tapeworm was that there was a skin in my stool, and so I looked in. I went to flush the toilet, and there was a skin like
Yeah.
this big,
Oh,
and I found I took it, and I was talking to someone who was like yourself, really knowledgeable in the microbiome and mycobiome, and he looked at me. It was like horrific. I'll never forget this moment. And he goes, "Well, Josh, like it's like a snake. Like, why does a snake shed its skin?" And I was like, "Because it's growing." And I was like, "Oh!" I was like, "No!" Like it was just, oh, I
no.
was like, I wanted to die.
I,
But it's the
yeah,
reality. It's like a
yeah,
reptile almost.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's
Oh
so
my
funny.
god, crazy.
Yeah.
So what do you have recommendations for testing, and like do you guys do testing for how to test your microbiome, your dysbiosis, and then someone can get some more precise actionable steps? Because I found once I did this test, they gave me like customized herbs, like everything, and I had a bit of a game plan, and so it felt achievable.
Sure.
Do you have recommendations
Sure,
for that?
sure. Biome Health offers a gut testing which not only look at bacteria but also fungus.
Hmm.
So,
Oh
and
wow.
also once you have the results, your personal results, they compare it with a large number of healthy people to see where is the dysbiosis. Now, based on that results and the dysbiosis, then they provide recommendation. What
Hmm.
sort of food you need to eat? What sort of supplements? What sort of exercise? As we talked about stress, please take care of the stress because there are questionnaires. So, and then they will recommend products to use, and not necessarily by the way they are made by Biome. What's the beneficial product? Like for example, if you have an increase in protobacteria, you should have vitamin D3, okay, as well as eat fiber. If you have candida overgrowth, you have to have vitamin A, B, and C, because studies have shown that if you are deficient in these, you have these issues. So they will recommend what is appropriate to take care, to rebalance and maintain your gut health. And
Right.
people can go biomehealth.com and they will find gut testing.
Is that international or US only? Like, could you do it from
At
Canada
the
to US
moment,
or?
it's US only.
You're right. Okay. Got it. So, what about something that's been popping up a little bit is mold in the home? and bacteria in the home. Like, so as far as like black mold, or
Sure.
I live in a very tropical place, so there's a lot of rain. Like, it rains a lot. It's very beautiful, but I can definitely, I'm like, this feels a little bit suspect. What would be some tips for, should people just move out of their house if they find mold, or are there ways that they can combat it? What are your
You
suggestions there?
know, this is very, very interesting topic. And by the way, when the first time people start thinking of mold in the house, believe it or not, it was in Cleveland.
Wow.
A young child died because of a mold called Stachybotrys. So they contacted me to help them, you know, and we start doing a lot of testing and whatever. And I wrote an opinion piece with one fellow, his name Duncan Kuhn, with me, very smart fellow. I was lucky to have him as my, I mentored him. And what we found, look, in molds and fungus, first of all, let me tell you mold is the same like fungus, but mold is different form, mostly those like that have a lot of filaments, because there are others that are yeast like candida, like saccharomyces. Okay, so mold is one class of fungus. Okay, so what we found is fungi is all over the place, like you cannot get rid of it. And that's why when we are working in the lab, we have to work in a safety cabinet. Otherwise, all the fungus in the air contaminated.
Mm,
As long as the number of fungi in your house inside is less than the outside, you are fine. And
okay.
look, we, especially in a humid place like you have, if you have any humidity, fungi love humidity. And we really looked at the health condition associated with mold. A lot of the time there is confusion. There are other factors that play a role, like somebody who's immunocompromised and then they have fungus. Of course, it's more likely
Mm,
to get issue. Okay, so to me, definitely there is a relation between mold in the house, if it is high, and asthma, but we could not find a lot of relation with other more serious conditions,
mm,
like neuro deficient situations and this sort of thing. And then, to my delight, the Institute of Medicine also published a paper about molds in the house, and they really agree with our findings. So,
okay.
look, if you find mold, you need to make sure there is no leakage in the house. Try to get rid of it, okay? But again, don't be paranoia about it.
Yeah, because it's been pretty crazy. So it sounds like, if I just make sure we're on the same page, if someone is immunocompromised, then it is quite dangerous. But if they're quite healthy, it's kind of like it's not too bad. You can just
Yes.
clear it up. So I know two guys quite close to me that one of them was in his car, and he was like, he found mold in his car, and so he just cleaned his car out, and he inhaled it, and it like ruined his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, just completely, like, and the doctors couldn't find it out. Thankfully, he found someone like yourself who was aware, and did some proper mold testing, and it had grown in his brain. And
Wow.
so this is like this nightmare situation. Obviously, would the assumption be that he was in an enclosed place and it was because he was breathing it in quite heavily, or is it a two punch, because maybe that happened and he was likely already
Yeah.
immunocompromised?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's
Got it.
one thing. The other thing, when you have mold in your house, when you clean, especially these days, putting a mask is not a problem at all.
Mm,
Listen, you use a mask, try to use the, disinfectants to get rid of it, and it should be fine. Once it is done, it is not a big issue. I mean,
okay.
look, there are situations where mold. I remember when I was a young man, we lived in England. My wife and I, we old cottage, old keeper cottage. It's called. It's up in the
Yeah.
hill and this sort of thing. It was lovely place, as you say. But in winter, oh my God, mold start to grow on the walls. We could see it. The good thing we were young, our immunity was good, so we cleaned it and took care of it.
I bet you loved it. You were like, this is fascinating.
Oh, I can hear. I have it at home. So yeah, like I think again, uh, if it's too much, you really need, even if it's little. Look, if you have leakage, fix your pipes
Mm,
and then
yeah.
clean around it, and then you don't have to worry. Also, open windows, let it be. Aeration is very, very important.
Yeah.
A lot of the
Totally.
time, people in winter, they really close the house. I remember in Lebanon, that's what sometimes we use. everything is closed. And then, of course, any mold there or anything
Hmm.
will increase and would cause issues. So open the windows, air, air the house will
Yeah,
be very, very important.
for sure. What are you really excited about in the coming year? Like, what are you really excited and looking forward to this year in
Yeah.
regards to your research?
I think I'm really very excited about. Look, first of all, we had the microbiome field passed in three stages. The first stage, we realized that in our body we have microbes in all over the body. Some of them bad, some of them good. The second stage, we realized that there is a relationship between microorganisms and diseases like Crohn's, as I mentioned. But now the exciting is we have been collecting data from, remember, we do the testing with people, they send us their
Yeah.
samples, and of course they have consent and the questionnaire. So we have different cohorts. So we have large number of people with stress, large number of people with obesity, large number, whatever, different conditions. Now we are taking this data and try to find solutions to it. How can we find new probiotic, new ingredients, not necessarily just probiotic, prebiotic enzymes that can rebalance the gut. And also, once we have this, we want to validate it. So I'm very excited to try to really, I say, the future of the microbiome is, can we come out with solutions that target different cohorts or different conditions? This is
Hmm.
really very exciting because not only we had our basic science, as a scientist you are excited, you do basic science, but now we are translating this basic science
Yeah.
to help hopefully people.
Wow, that is exciting. That's really cool.
Thank you.
What's a cornerstone habit that you've kept? Maybe it's the walking and de-stressing, or maybe it's like something food. What's something that you've really kept that you'll keep for the rest of your life?
Now, number one is walking. I love walking. Now, believe it or not, I don't go up in the elevator. I go up and down the stairs. They laugh at me because my office is fifth floor and the lab. So the people working with me say, "Let's go there." I say, "No, I'm going up here." And sometimes we compete.
That's a race.
I go running. So I love that. The other thing, I changed my eating habits. Like at lunchtime, I just had the fruits, the lettuce, and I love to have nuts, especially pistachios, because they are very beneficial and they
Love
help with the
pistachios.
microbiome. So yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
It's
I
good.
feel like you and I could have a good meal together. Pistachios, ice cream, and lamb chops would be pretty
We
good.
are ready. Yes.
Amazing. And what do you think that guys at my age in their 30s, what's a piece of advice you'd have for them, moving forward? What do you think they need to hear right now?
Look, I think the best thing, listen, as I said, first of all, moderation. We don't have to, life is stressful as it is. So be moderation. I would say try to have an exercise like a program. Like now I have at home, I bought a bike, Peloton, I love it. I do in the morning. Then in the afternoon, I take my dog for a walk and this sort of thing. I try to find out, what good food to eat, to be selective as we talked about.
Mm.
You need also social interaction. You need to have friends. You need to have people. It's very, very critical. These days, like a lot of the time, you watch kids like all in the phone or iPad and whatever. So for us, like as you say, in your age, it's good to have social interaction
Oh
because
my goodness.
this
Yeah.
is really very, very nice. A friend of mine wrote a book called Unaging, and he
Mm.
talks about balancing your microbiome, reducing the stress, social interaction, and lifestyle. Is
I love
is
that.
if you put it together, will be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that piece is so overlooked, and kind of the thing that I've realized the hard way is all of the things that you're saying is like just a little less stress, a little bit better in the diet, a little more time with friends makes a huge difference. It's not a
Yes.
marginal difference. It's the difference between okay health and
Yeah.
exceptional
Yeah.
health.
And honestly, now I am 73. I really feel, thank God, healthy and this sort of
Mm.
thing. And you don't know. It's so funny. Life is so funny as you get older. You are a young man, my friend. Okay, so don't worry about it. But for me, I'm a happy guy. I say, you know what? I had a good life. There are challenges all the time in our life, but you deal with it. You know, And that's how it is. I'm optimistic. Yeah, be optimistic, my friend. It'll
I
be good.
love that. That's amazing. I think that's a great place to finish, Mahmoud. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation with you.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. And that was amazing. Thank you so much. That was great.
I really enjoyed